men are giving pursuit to a guy who is riding a horse, and they are firing their weapons at the man. He outruns them and then makes a risky charge through a breathtaking landscape in a location that is ordinarily empty at that time of day. John Wayne's portrayal of the character Quirt Evans, who feels powerless in the face of his unsteady horse, exemplifies this trait well. Penelope Worth, whose character was represented by Gail Russell, and her father, Thomas Worth, who was portrayed by John Halloran, rushed to her father's aid after he has been hurt as a result of falling and injuring himself. Penelope Worth's character was performed by Gail Russell, while her father's character was portrayed by John Halloran. Quirt is in a lot of pain, but he is keen on traveling to the telegraph office first so that he may send a telegram to claim some property and have it registered in his name before he can get medical aid for his injuries. This is despite the fact that Quirt has been injured very severely. After that, he wraps things off by performing this one more thing before heading to the hospital. When the person exposes his actual identity, a local telegrapher by the name of Bradley, who is represented in the movie by Olin Howland, recognizes him as a well-known gunfighter. Quirt finally loses consciousness while being held by Penelope, shortly after first having a brief gap in awareness. Penelope and her father immediately placed a call for immediate medical assistance after taking Quirt inside with them after having brought him outside. Even though Quirt is sleeping after receiving laudanum from Dr. Mangrum, Tom Powers, he is still somewhat restless, and Quirt's father does not comprehend that his son is reaching for his gun out of instinct. The father of Quirt seems to be a bit perplexed. After Quirt has been able to collect himself, the bullet will be extracted, the wound will be cleaned, and a bandage will be placed after the magazine of the handgun has been emptied of its supply of ammunition. After the magazine of the pistol has been emptied, you will proceed with the remaining phases in this process. The family does not agree with the urgent suggestion that Dr. Mangrum has made to transfer Quirt because they think it is their job as Quakers to provide medical treatment for the wounded person. Mangrum's plan to remove Quirt has been met with opposition from the family. Quirt should look for a new home away from his family as soon as possible, according to Mangrum's urgent recommendation. Dr. Mangrum is an agnostic who puts a great deal of importance on pragmatism in his life and work. Quirt makes the decision to forego getting out of bed and instead decides to stay sleeping for the whole of both days. When he is sleeping, he is plagued by terrifying dreams that include gunfights and women, in particular a woman named Lila. In particular, he is obsessed on her. Penelope does not sleep through the night in order to keep an eye on him. While Irene Rich, who plays the character of Penelope's mother, and Penelope are in the kitchen, Penelope asks Irene Rich, who portrays the role of Penelope's mother, about the circumstances surrounding her first meeting with her husband and their courting. After Quirt eventually wakes to and recognizes that there has been a commotion, he rummages around beneath the pillow to get his rifle, and then he gets out of bed while still holding the weapon in his hands. After that, he gives Penelope a glance that betrays his surprise. They are of the idea that everyone has innate virtue that can be fostered, and as a result, they have no problem with Quirt's prior way of life, which consisted of quick draws, quick women, drinking, bar fights, and other vices. However, since they are of the belief that everyone has natural virtue that can be cultivated, they have no problem with Quirt's current way of life. The previous way of life that Quirt led, which included things like quick draws, speedy girls, drinking, and other vices, does not bother Quirt's family in the least. Quirt's mother makes a wide range of delectable meals, such as sausages, eggs, donuts, and cakes, all of which help to the development of Quirt's physical strength, and he likes eating them very much. Quirt's mother prepares a variety of foods, including sausages, eggs, donuts, and cakes. Bradley, who is the town's telegrapher, brags that he has known Quirt for a very long time in town, despite the fact that the only time he has ever seen Quirt is when he was sending the message. The only time Bradley has ever seen Quirt is when he was sending the message. When Bradley sent out the message, Quirt was nowhere to be found. This is due to the fact that Quirt has a horrible reputation and is feared by everyone else in the area. As a consequence of this situation has arisen. The individuals who were involved for the shooting of Quirt a few days earlier, headed by Laredo Stevens, Bruce Cabot, together with two thugs, hunt for him, question Bradley, and finally go to the house of the Quakers. Bradley is the one who leads the interrogation. This organization is directed by Laredo Stevens, who serves as the leader. When Quirt sees Laredo standing in front of the home, he immediately springs out of bed, gets dressed, and takes his revolver off the nightstand. However, Mr. Worth used up all of the ammo in the weapon, and as a result, it does not now contain any bullets that are capable of being fired. In order to intimidate the other people with his sham firearm, he projects an image of aggressiveness while behaving in a powerful manner. Quirt draws out a deed to sell the piece of real land that he had purchased for $20,000 to the city of Laredo when he realized that Laredo needs the piece of real estate that Quirt had purchased for himself. Quirt is given $5,000 by Laredo, who then tells him that he will give him the other $5,000 when Quirt returns to collect it at a later time. This occurs after Quirt has already received the first $5,000. Quirt is going to make another trip in the future to get it for you. Because Quirt thinks it is vital to follow the traditions of his Quaker family, he chooses to hang his holstered revolver outdoors rather than carrying it inside. Quirt's family is Quaker. The Quaker customs that Quirt's family has upheld for generations are something that he feels strongly about preserving. As a direct consequence of being overly exposed to the Quaker way of life, gunfighter Quirt and the cynical and atheistic doctor who treats him begin to transform into new people. This is a direct effect of the Quaker way of life. Quirt is extremely grateful to his family for the careful attention that they offer to the farm, and he does what he can to assist with the agricultural operations whenever he is able to. Quirt's gratitude is shown in the fact that he does what he can to help the farm succeed. When Penelope first laid eyes on him, it was almost as if she had a case of falling in love at first sight. Quirt comes to have feelings of love for her as a direct result of their conversations about one another, the work they do on the farm, and the beliefs of the Quakers. After what seemed like an eternity, Quirt finally got around to kissing her, and she was so struck with happiness that she started crying. Regarding Quirt's most recent deeds, Territorial Marshal Wistful McClintock, who is represented by Harry Carey, engages in a conversation with the character of Quirt. Both of them will have their train of thought disrupted as a result of this. Even though he warns Penelope about her husband's proclivities and assures her that he would be keeping a close watch on him, the marshal believes Penelope when she claims that he hasn't left the property in days, and he takes her word for it. This is despite the fact that he promised her that he would be keeping a cautious check on him. The feelings of fondness that Quirt now has are undoubtedly going to develop further. Penelope eventually tells Quirt the truth about how she feels for him, and she is taken aback when she learns that he does not feel the same way about her. Quirt does not reciprocate her emotions for him. Quirt's lack of reciprocity leaves Penelope in astonishment. Quirt's attitude on life is highly impacted by the youthful naivete with which she approaches things, which is a sight that is both uplifting and delightful to watch. She makes a comment that may be interpreted as "I never thought it could happen to one and not another." Quirt's outlook on life is greatly influenced by the innocence with which she approaches things. Because of the way he lives and the fact that he would seek vengeance against those who shot him, Quirt does not want love to be the driving force in his life. As a direct consequence of this, Quirt does not intend to let love serve as the primary motivating factor in his life. His long-standing routines have a persistently powerful pull on him, and he finds that he is lured back to engaging in them again and time again. The fact that Quirt is known for being a gunslinger comes in handy when he is mediating a dispute with a neighbor over the rerouting of water that once flowed into the Quaker settlement over the diversion of the water supply. The investigation led to the conclusion that the neighbor was to fault for the water being diverted. Quirt is able to convince Frederick Carson, a neighbor who is portrayed by Paul Hurst, to be a good neighbor and remove the top two boards that are obstructing the flow of water into irrigation canals and flumes by using his scary reputation. Quirt does this by using his fearsome reputation to persuade Carson. Quirt achieves this goal by making threats at Carson. This objective is achieved by Quirt by making an appeal to Carson's regard for him based on his fearsome reputation. On the other side, the old man goes from being an irritating neighbor to a friend of the Worth family as a direct result of the subsequent warm and unreserved greeting he receives from the Worths. When Quirt is joyfully taking a dish of pies and pastries from Mrs. Worth, Carson tells Quirt that he feels good about helping his neighbors because it makes him feel like he's contributing to the community. Quirt is still on the fence about what to do. Carson is really giddy at the prospect of getting the dish. Quirt discovers that the more time he spends with his family, the more he is drawn to the manner in which they live their lives, and this attraction only becomes stronger with time. Quirt is on his way to a Quaker meeting where he is supposed to get some kind of surprise, when an old friend and former member of the Confederacy, Randy McCall, played by Lee Dixon, walks by him on his way there. Quirt recognizes McCall from their time together in the Confederacy. Quirt is waiting for McCall to surprise him in some way with something unexpected. After Randy has finished making the turn, the action will move on to the next step. After the water problem brought up during the meeting was successfully resolved, the Quirt team made a public demonstration of their gratitude for the Quaker group by giving them a Bible and expressing their thanks for their assistance. This was done in the presence of the other attendees. After Quirt presents Randy with a Bible, Randy's interest in the book's material grows, and as a result, he begins to read aloud portions from the Bible whenever he has the opportunity to do so. Quirt's gift of the Bible is what first piques Randy's interest in the book. During the time that Penelope is at the party, a young and stunning blacksmith from the neighborhood approaches her. It is immediately apparent that he is interested in dating and, eventually, marrying her. Quirt is unwilling to admit or take responsibility for his growing hatred, and as a result, he is unable to control the development of these feelings. After the wedding, Randy draws Quirt aside and tells him that he is aware that Laredo has plans to steal a huge herd the next day when it is being transported through a nearby valley. Quirt is surprised to hear this news since he was unaware of Laredo's intentions. Quirt is taken aback by this information since he was not aware of Laredo's intentions before hearing it. Quirt was taken aback when he learned this information since he had been under the notion that Randy was aware of all of these preparations. As a result, Quirt was taken by surprise. Quirt is overawed by the applause of the Quakers, and he is confident that he is not the appropriate person for Penelope, so he seizes the opportunity to leave and seek to make a return to his former life. He is certain that he is not the correct person for Penelope, and he is certain that he is not the proper person for Penelope. He goes because he is certain that Penelope should not be with him since he is not the right guy for her. After he has handed Randy over to us, he then gives the blacksmith the instruction to immediately marry Penelope, and after he has finished giving the blacksmith the instruction, he leaves with Randy. When the Laredo gang tried to take the herd, Quirt, Randy, and another one of Quirt's friends were able to stop them before they were successful. As the onslaught that is erupting from Laredo begins, there are early reports of horses rushing at full speed, guns being fired, riders being thrown from their saddles, and a feeling of fear. However, the Quirt's gang appears out of nowhere from behind and proceeds to execute the rustlers one at a time by hitting them over the head with long wooden clubs as they fall on the ground. In the next scene, we get a glimpse of Randy and Quirt relaxing with a drink in a saloon or casino in Red Rock, where Lila, Joan Barton, is performing as the featured singer at the time. The prior version of Quirt is no longer made accessible in any way, shape, or form. He partakes in gaming and winds up winning a substantial number of money, which he then utilizes to make a buy for Lila that will serve as a reminder of the time they have spent together as friends. He hopes that the item will be a special keepsake for her. Then, he provokes a large altercation in the bar by pushing away a group of customers who are drinking at the bar while yelling more whiskey. In the process of doing so, after he has returned to the Worth farm, he tells Penelope that he would want to resume the discussion that they were having before he left and that he would like to pick up where they left off. McClintock is unsure about whether or not he wants to make a change in his life at this time. He continues by saying, "You know, Quirt, I always figured on using a new rope and hanging you," and then continues by saying, "You know, Quirt, that's what hangs all of you fellas in the end, I'm patient." Despite the near religious reverence with which he holds Quirt's reputation, McClintock tells Quirt, "You know, Quirt, I always figured on using these folks make Quirt a frequent stop in their travels through time." After some time has passed, Quirt complies with Penelope's request that he not carry his weapon along when he drives her about in a buckboard wagon to pick blackberries. She had previously expressed this one of him. Instead, he does not bring his gun with them when they go somewhere. The two are in the middle of a romantic idyll as they pick blackberries, but it is abruptly cut short when Laredo and his gang come on galloping horses after having spotted them from a distance and thereby ruining their perfect moment. Laredo and his gang saw the two from a distance and consequently disrupted their ideal moment. There is not much of a choice save fleeing the situation, and what happens after that is a dramatic chase that sees men on horseback following a wagon as it travels down a road. Penelope is standing next to him, but he does not have any weapons in his possession. He is surrounded by a smaller army. In the course of maneuvering through the rough and packed environment, one individual brushes up against a tree branch, makes clandestine motions, and jumps over obstructions, but, in the end, his wagon careens off of a cliff and plunges from a large height into a river that is narrow and deep. It is possible for Quirt to swim when Penelope is sound asleep since he is able to pull her after him in the water. This enables him to conceal his identity among the rocks, which is convenient for him. A few seconds later, Laredo watches the scenario from a higher vantage point, and draws the conclusion that the only way Quirt could have died was through drowning. As soon as Quirt walks into the Worth property carrying Penelope while she is unconscious, the homeowner immediately dials 911 to request immediate medical assistance. The prognosis is not good, so the skeptical doctor begins to lecture about how dangerous Quirt is to others who are around him and how unpleasant it is that his profession compels him to treat people who continue to participate in risky activity and sustain injuries on a regular basis. Since the prognosis is not good, the doctor is lecturing about how annoying it is that his job forces him to treat people who continue to do so. The prognosis is not encouraging, so the attending physician proceeds to deliver a speech on how Quirt poses a threat to others who are in the same room with him. After Quirt discovers that Laredo is now frequenting the bar, he does not waste any time and flies into town in order to face Laredo. He behaves in this way not just because he seeks vengeance, but also because he is scared by the idea of losing the person who has been the most significant love of his life. His actions are motivated not merely by retribution, but also by fear. As he approaches the community from one end, the people who live there scatter and go their own ways as he gets closer. Laredo is completely caught aback by the knowledge that Quirt is waiting for him at the other end of town once he finds out about it. First, he orders one of his thugs to go around the outside of the building and check the situation via the peephole. After then, he comes to the realization that he should wait while taking another swig from the bottle of whiskey. He comes to this realization while he is waiting. This is something that he does while waiting, and according to him, he does it while taking another swig from the bottle. Penelope is now aware, and despite the fact that she is in a fragile condition, she requests to be transported to town in the wagon while she is lying down. This request is made despite the fact that Penelope is in a vulnerable situation. The Worth wagon has reached where it was directed to go after being sent to a certain spot. Penelope is resolute in her efforts to prevent Quirt from acting on the violent impulses that drive him, despite the fact that Quirt is a man known for his violent tendencies. Laredo walks into the bar at the precise time when Quirt is ready to turn his back on Laredo in order to talk with her. Quirt is having a conversation with Laredo. Penelope, who would be in danger if Quirt went to meet Laredo with his gun, is one of the reasons Quirt turns to face Laredo without his weapon. Another reason Quirt goes to confront Laredo without his weapon is because he is worried about Laredo. The narrative may have had a tragic conclusion if it weren't for the vigilant actions of McClintock, who keeps his rifle trained on Laredo from a distance and shoots as soon as he sees Laredo reach for his gun. McClintock's actions save the day and prevent the story from coming to a tragic conclusion. The acts of McClintock prevented a disastrous outcome from occurring at the end of the narrative. The nefarious men meet their end as a direct consequence of this, dying by ways that are unrelated to Quirt, such as being shot by other people or being engaged in other catastrophes. While Quirt is getting ready to leave with the Worths for his hometown, the marshal grabs Quirt's rifle and proclaims that he will hang it in his office in honor of the opponent who never was along with the new rope. This occurs while Quirt is getting ready to leave with the Worths. This takes place just before Quirt is getting set to go on his journey with the Worths back to his homeland.